Am I the asshole for putting my M33 mental well-being as a priority instead of my child and wife, F33, after she requested an open marriage? My wife and I have been a couple for 9 years and married for 7 years. We have a son who is currently 6 years old. We both work and take turns doing both household chores and homework with our son. Now, I have the mentality of I am my priority, which my parents taught me since I was a child. If there is something that threatens my own peace, I am simply going to leave it, and that's it, no matter how much it hurts at first. Now, my sex life with my wife has always been quite active, although it was reduced a little years ago due to the issue of pregnancy and childbirth. That little by little was resolved and we ended up having a good sex life again, at least that it was what I believed. My wife recently told me to talk. She told me that even though she loves me, she feels that ours has become a little monotonous. I told her that I had no problems with that, but she told me that what she was meaning was that she wants to try new things, but with other people, that I could do it too, and that it doesn't have to affect our relationship or our family. I'll be honest, her proposal hurt me a lot. She told me to think about it, that she wasn't going to force me. A couple of days passed in which, at my request, she slept with our son while I stayed in our room, which I cried as much as I could and to think about what to do. I came to the conclusion that I didn't want the open marriage, and that it was going to disturb my peace as much as possible. So I talked to my wife and told her that I wanted a divorce if she wanted her open marriage, and that she could have the child 5 days a week while I can have him on the weekends. She immediately said no, that she doesn't want to end our relationship, that we don't need to end it because that would affect her and our son. I responded, and why should I care? If it affects me, it's the most important thing for me. What she didn't take very well, she accused me of being selfish, manipulative, and a bad father. I told her the truth. I told her that if we divorced, yes, our son would have a hard time, but that he would end up getting used to it like every child. What's the problem then? I told her that I've cried enough and that all I want is a little peace, and that her desire to walk around like a drunk teenager having orgies would not give me that peace. Just as she made her intentions clear about wanting an open relationship, I made mine clear about keeping my peace, even if it means separating from them. AITA for that? Am I the asshole for punishing my F38 son, M12, for hitting his bully? My son was new at his school. He is a quiet and very shy person, so very soon he began to have problems with a boy who was stronger than him. He told us this. I advised him to ignore him or complain to the teachers, but my husband, M36, took a different approach. Before I knew it, my husband was teaching my son to fight, but not a specific martial art, but rather he was teaching him street fighting, blows to the solar plexus, to the neck, kicks behind the thigh, or a blow to the liver area, things that my husband taught my son to deal with people stronger than him. A few weeks later, and with what he had learned, my son came home one day with my husband and with the news that he was suspended from school for 2 weeks for hitting his bully. It seems that it was not a simple fight, but that our son did not react. He stopped until he broke the boy's leg. I'm not going to lie, I was quite shocked by all this. I had a strong argument with my husband regarding the subject, but he said that the important thing is that the boy is still alive and that we don't have to pay anything for his treatment, and even more so, what is important is that our son defended himself. I thought about it for the next few days and thought, well, my husband has a point. My son just stood up for himself, and at least now he can stand up for himself. That is until one day I went to pick him up from school because I had left work early. There I saw my son approaching the boy who was his bully a little further away, walking with a pair of crutches. What I saw next left me in shock. I saw my son approach the boy and who, as soon as he saw him, tried to go the opposite way. I saw that my son caught up with him and kicked his crutch, causing the boy to fall to the ground, and then he ran away towards me. At that moment I didn't say anything, but when I got home I gave my son the scolding of his life. I threatened to tell his dad about it because my husband has zero tolerance for bullies, and that my son was being one. Then my son told me that his dad already knew and agreed, that what he is doing is justified because it is revenge, so I simply punished him and told him that I would talk to his dad about it. My husband arrived and we argued about it. I told him how can he condone that attitude of our son. He said that he is simply repaying the bully for what he did before. I told him that that is wrong, that this is no longer self-defense. Then my husband told me that I was being irrational, that I should think in the long term. What will happen when that bastard is healed? He is going to seek revenge. Therefore, before he is healed, he must be traumatized enough to never think more about getting closer to our son, were the words he told me, and that by punishing him the only thing I am doing is teaching our son that he should not defend himself. Although I understand my husband's plan, it seems too cruel to me. I could see how that child was running away from my son with terror in his eyes. It is obvious that it is not the first time he has done it. I just want my child to return to be the kind person he was before, but my husband thinks that as long as he doesn't do the same thing to innocent people then there is no problem. So am I the asshole for wanting to correct my son by punishing him for hitting his bully? About how my husband learned to fight that way, he had an uncle who was a police officer and who was removed from his position for participating in street fights. He taught my husband to fight when he was younger because he also suffered from bullying in the school by people who were physically stronger than him, hence his attitude of zero tolerance towards bullying. Guys, if you're enjoying this type of content, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you don't miss out, and share this video. It means a lot and it helps us make more videos like these. Am I the asshole for abandoning my daughter on vacation? My wife and I have always dreamed of celebrating our 40th anniversary with a luxurious vacation. Just the two of us, reliving the romance of our early years. We had it all planned out for years now and we're excited beyond words. Enter our adult daughter Jane. Jane and her husband got wind of our plans and promptly invited themselves and their two children, 9F, 5M, along. I originally put my foot down and told them this trip was just for us, which upset her some. But my wife has a hard time saying no to Jane, as she is the youngest of our children and our only daughter, and she didn't want to hurt her feelings, so she reluctantly agreed to let them join. I wasn't thrilled about it at the time, but I wanted to make my family happy, and I knew my wife was also okay with the idea of a family trip even if she was heartbroken we wouldn't get our romantic trip. We went along with it. The place we were originally going was not child-friendly, so we changed course and decided on an all-inclusive family-friendly resort. We paid for the resort and our grandchildren's plane tickets. Jane and her husband only had to pay for their own airfare. Here's where things get complicated. As the vacation got closer, I started having a change of heart. I realized that our 40th anniversary was a once-in-a-lifetime milestone, and I wanted to honor it in a way that was true to our original plans. My wife and I might not be able to afford a trip like this again for quite some time, and it's something we always wanted to do. So, without consulting anyone, I switched our tickets last minute to go to the romantic destination that my wife and I had originally planned for. I did not tell Jane or her husband. I didn't even tell my wife until the day before our flight left, which was a day before Jane's flight left for their vacation. It wasn't an easy decision and I feel guilty about it. But I wanted our 40th anniversary to be the special, intimate celebration we had always hoped for. We called Jane after we landed to tell her, and she was extremely upset to say the least. She seemed of the idea that we were going to look after our grandkids so she and her husband could have alone time, and now that I abandoned her they would have to do it all themselves. I hung up on them when my son-in-law started shouting, and my wife and I enjoyed the rest of our trip. They came back the same day we did but have not answered any of our texts, and Jane seems to be ignoring me. My wife told me she vastly preferred our trip to the family trip we would have taken, but she still doesn't like how Jane is mad at us and wants me to apologize. I'm not sure I want to after learning Jane and her husband were using us for free babysitting and a free trip, but I feel like I should just to keep the peace. Am I the asshole for changing our trip destination last minute and leaving Jane and her family to fend for themselves? Am I the asshole for kicking my son's girlfriend out of our house? My husband, 58M, and I, 56F, recently met my son's, 24M, girlfriend for the first time. He's been crazy about her. Apparently they've been dating for a year before he decided to have her meet us officially. What he's told us about her all seems great. She just got her degree, was enjoying her job, family-oriented, etc. I'm honestly just glad he's happy with her. My husband and I don't think he's ever been this into someone before, so I feel pretty bad about what I did. Last weekend, he brought her over for dinner. By now we'd been anticipating meeting her with how much our son has been gushing about her. How perfect she is, that she's the one, in his words. They ring the doorbell. We open the door. She looks exactly like her pictures, which is a great start. My son is grinning ear to ear, another great start. We invite them in. She accepts my hug and a firm handshake from my husband, and then she opens her mouth. I'm the one your son puts his penis in. To be frank, I was appalled. I expected my husband to laugh. Both he and my son are jokesters, and as annoying as it can be, I love it, but this was just too much for me. Maybe I'm reserved, but of all things she could have shared about my son, she told us that. One look at my face and my husband knew how much I disapproved. Maybe I let my expectations get too high, and it's unfair to have them, but I reiterate, of all things to say to her boyfriend's parents whom she'd never met, she chose that. My son was amused at first, but when he noticed my reaction his face dropped. I felt like he'd sold me the full package, everything he'd always been looking for in a girlfriend. I was too disturbed by the visual it put in my head, and it translated into anger. I told her to get out, and I wanted to say more about how gross it made me feel, but I fortunately left it at that. My son didn't want to go, insisting I give her another chance, but I was too fed up and uncomfortable by this point. Even my husband, who's enjoyed his fair share of raunchy jokes, wouldn't let up. They left and I immediately felt guilty. This was something my son had really looked forward to, and I feel like I took that away over a dumb joke. I tried calling to apologize, but he hasn't responded. My husband thinks she's the one who should apologize. I'm considering giving her another chance, but before I do, was I the asshole? Edit, I should clear some things up. My husband had no part in my reaction. I did the kicking out, not him. I don't want him taking the fall for this. He said she should apologize, but I'm not expecting an apology. Sorry for the confusion. My son lives in a nearby state. It can take about an hour to get back to where we live. He also hasn't dated anyone seriously for a while, maybe a couple of years. He told us before that he wouldn't bring anyone home unless he's sure he wants a future with her. We've been asking to meet her ever since he told us about her, but he wanted to be ready. The comment about her looking like her picture shows my age. Sorry for that. He's only shown us her photos she sent him, as he apparently didn't have any of them together. He hates taking pictures, and apparently she's always teasing him about it. I don't think he'd ever lie about who she is, but it's just a parental concern I've subconsciously had. I felt the same way about my daughter's boyfriend when we first met him. I don't have any criteria that either of my kids' spouses need to meet. I just hope my kids are happy with them. What I meant by her being the full package was indicative of what he's told us about her. As his parents, we have a good idea of what he looks for in a partner, and she checked off everything based on what we'd been told. And on top of everything, aside from what she said, her appearance was how she presented it to be. Again, we aren't strict about appearances. It's just a relief to have met someone for the first time and they look like what you'd expected. My husband said that I was worried about secondhand catfishing, if that's even a thing, lol. I guess it shows how anxious I was about this. Also, thank you for your comments and rewards. I've had a few people reach out to me personally too. Thank you for that. Regardless of where you stand, I appreciate it. I personally think everyone needs some room for improvement here, but I've done my part to make amends, and I'm waiting on my son to call me. I'll be sure to give an update about how it goes. Update: thanks for reaching out, everyone. My son got in touch with me. His girlfriend agreed to try again. We all met at a restaurant my son and his girlfriend chose. The first thing she said was an apology for what she said. I apologized for my reaction. We hugged. It was nice. She then explained how my son had convinced her a joke like that would land well, and that she wouldn't have said it if she didn't think we'd like it. According to my son, she was reluctant to open with any jokes at all, but they came up with that one together on the way over. You guys were right. She's a really sweet girl. She's actually very mature, too. I see why my son likes her so much. My husband and I really like her. We told our son to bring her when he visits. We look forward to seeing them again. Overall, I'm glad we could start over. On the right foot this time. Thanks, everyone, for your input.